got a question for you about the offensive line. It felt like last offseason you guys had a lot of bigger bodies with Banks and Belton. Was that an intentional move and something that you've changed in your evaluation process of offensive line?
I wouldn't say it's anything we've changed in our evaluation process, but it was intentional. Like, we did want to get bigger, a little bit more stout up front, be able to move people in the run game if we can. So I would say it's intentional, but it's not something necessarily we changed in our process.
Was that more something because of the personnel for the run game, or with the way Jordan Love operates in the passing game, or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. I think coming out of 2024, I just thought we were getting pushed around a little bit more than I wanted to. And again, I think all 32 teams here covet big guys who can move, right? Because they're the hardest guys to find. And so again, it was natural that we added that.
Is that something you'd like to keep looking at for this offseason as well?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
You guys had the draft last year in Green Bay. What was that experience like for the city and the front office as you guys went through it?
Yeah, I think there was probably more anxiety leading up to it than needed to be, because our group in the city pulled it off so well. There was really from my perspective, all I cared about was the distractions and how in our process and our preparation, and there was really none of that. And then to kind of see it unfolded how it did and how cool it was, and the moments for the players, for our city in Green Bay in general was really cool. I think we're the first ones that actually had it on site, so like we could look out the window and see it all, and it was just it lived up to everything and beyond of what I expected in a positive way.
You think it's important for cities like Green Bay and Pittsburgh, which may not be able to host a Super Bowl, but to get this is that's important for those fans to get to see that?
I do. I think it's a great event. We had a great turnout. The weather was good enough for us in Green Bay, but I think it's amazing in my 20-some years in this league to see what the draft has kind of turned into. Again, where it was always at Radio Music City Hall, never left, and then now to see being able to move from town to town and each place, doing such a good job with it, pretty neat.
Having Sean Mannion on your staff the last couple of years, what did you make of working with him, and what do you make of his rise to be an OC this quick?
Not shocked that it's happened that fast because of the way he works. He's a tireless worker, exceptionally bright. Usually when you bring in a young, really talented coach like that, you're kind of hoping to have him for a number of years, and that's unfortunate for us. But he's going to do a great job, and he's the ability to see the game through a quarterback's eyes because of his playing career, coming from a coaching family. I mean, there's just a lot to like there.
How was your view of the age of a prospect change during the years in the NFL? Right, the draft has gotten a little bit older, and does it matter more or less if it's a first-round pick?
Like within the draft?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think over the last few years, obviously, we've taken a long look at that and how that plays into it. We've had a number of prospects that, if they would have come out in the traditional 4 years or so, maybe have only started 1 year, now they've got 3 years under their belt. The numbers we've seen on our board in specific spots has been way higher, I think, because of the amount of guys that are in their 5th, 6th, or 7th year in college, and that is specifically with the big guys and their ability to develop and having the time to develop. We've seen just more numbers there, and I think for the next year or so we'll probably still be in that window, and then I think we'll gradually graduate out of it.
Brian, as you enter this year's draft without a first-round pick, are there any second thoughts on the Micah Parsons trade? I know injuries happen, but him getting hurt, potentially
zero.
missing?
Yeah, none. No. He impacted our football team, and not only on the field but in our locker room in such a positive way. We're really excited for the years to come. So,
Brian, what is it about Green Bay specifically that has produced so many general managers in this league?
It's a good question. I think for me, it goes back to Ron Wolf. He got hired there in 1991, I think in the middle of the season. And he instilled a process that, I think we've all learned over time. It's been obviously proven in Green Bay for a number of years. It's been taken to other organizations and proven as well that it can, so I think it's really about the process. For me, I started, interned in 1997 and started full-time in 1999. And coming into that group who had already been to a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, and went to another, and just seeing all those guys, whether it's John Dorsey, John Schneider, Ted Thompson, Reggie McKenzie, Scott McLuhan, all those guys, and being able to learn from those guys, it was such an unbelievable time to learn that process. And really the process over all that time has stayed, foundationally the same. That certainly we've tweaked and evolved as the league has, but the foundation of how we build our football teams has stayed the same, and I think that's probably why.
Speaking on that foundation of the football team, you guys have made the playoffs for multiple years in a row. Right, what's that next step this roster has to take to make a Super Bowl and win it?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about this. Our ability to be more consistent in situational football and finishing off games. A number of our games the past couple of years we've been up in the games and just not been able to close them out. And our group's got to get to that point. So I think we're on our way there. I really like the guys in our locker room, and I like the makeup of our team. But that's an area that we have to fix.
A couple days ago, Rich McKay said that he wasn't anticipating a proposal from a team to attempt to ban the push sneaks, seeing as you guys were the team that proposed the rule change last year.
I'm sorry, can you speak up?
Sorry, Rich McKay said a couple days ago he wasn't anticipating a team proposal to attempt to ban the push sneaks, seeing as you guys were the team that proposed the rule change last year. Do you have any plans to reattempt to get that?
We don't, and nobody's reached out to us about doing it either. So.
When it comes to your approach, back to the historic nature of GMs and the Packers, your approach differs slightly in terms of player retention versus external additions. Could you talk about your own personal approach in balancing player retention versus external acquisitions?
Did you say mine differs?
Yeah, well, just slightly to talk about the why.
How does it differ?
Yeah,
I'm just
how
curious.
Is it different? And well, no, I'll let you elaborate on the how.
Okay.
Like you talked about the process.
Yeah.
I just wanted you really to elaborate in terms of your player retention versus external additions.
Yeah. I think we're always going to be a little bit of a draft and develop team, right? That's always going to be the bread and butter. I think the system is set up that way with the salary cap that that's the most advantageous way to build a football team. But every avenue is going to be exhausted to try to make our football team the best we can be. So I think we look at every situation, and how that affects our team. And if it makes sense to do that, we're going to do that. As far as the retention thing, I think, again, the salary cap kind of limits you. I think I've talked a lot about, I think league-wide, teams sign about 1.5 players from each draft class. That's usually the guys they retain. And I think the numbers just bear that out. But at the same time, your team's constantly evolving. And I think the biggest thing is you have to be honest with yourself about where your team is and what you need to do to move forward. Because every year is a different year. The teams that were really good this year, we may not be chasing those teams. It may be different. So you can't hone in too much on that. It's just more about you and how you're evolving. So.
As far as your expectations about Matt Golden, did he play up to the expectations this year from where you drafted him, and what's his trajectory?
Yeah, I thought Matthew did a great job. But with all the opportunities that we gave him, I thought he did an excellent job. Would have loved to seen him get more opportunities through the year. It didn't work out that way. But when he did, he performed, and he performed at a high level. And really excited to see where he goes in year 2. Obviously, he was a third-year player coming out of college, 1 year at Texas, 2 years at Houston. So I think his ceiling is very, very high. We're very, very excited about what he's going to do for our football team moving forward.
Speaking about the wide receiver room, losing a guy like Romeo Doubs into free agency, how do you expect to attack that through the draft and forward?
Yeah, we haven't lost anybody yet, right? We're still kind of going through that process. But Romeo's done a fantastic job for us over his 4 years with the Green Bay Packers. Very consistent. His work ethic is second to none. Again, we'd love to have him back, and if we do, he'll be a bit important part of our football team. And if we don't, I'm sure he'll be very successful wherever he goes.
Brian, now that you guys have had NILs for a while, the guys who transfer now, guys coming in financially stable, what has changed about the mental makeup you've observed, and how do you evaluate hunger and desire now that that's not really?
That's a great question, and I think it's constantly evolving. We're learning on the fly a little bit. For sure, one thing that's happened is these guys are much more transactional, much more educated about the business part of this game. And they're so used to whenever their season is done is taking a step back and looking at what's best for them, and whether that's currently where they're at or whether they should move on to another opportunity, which is their choice. Once they get here, it's not necessarily their choice anymore, but they're very much more educated about that process. For us as a scouting staff, it has become more difficult in the fact that there was a time where you could be talking to a position coach who knew this player as a junior in high school, had been in the home, knew the parents, saw him as a freshman, sophomore, and grow. now a lot of times when you go into a school, those people at that school might know the guy for 4 months, right? So it's different. We've had to attack the scouting process differently because of that. Our group does an amazing job with that, kind of adjusting on the fly and adapting to the kind of the environment we're working in. And so I feel very, very comfortable and confident in it, but it is different. It's very different.
Ryan, is there a timeline in which you'd like to get a special teams coordinator hired by?
I think we're in our particular situation, not as maybe not, you don't feel that pressure as much, only because we're the only team out there really looking for one. So I think we can take our time, and I think that's what Matt's doing and being really thorough. But I would expect that sooner rather than later, just because the bus is moving and we got to get moving with it.
There's a lot that goes into the pre-draft process for draft weekend. What's your favorite aspect of the pre-draft process?
Ooh, I think it's always just probably two things. One, getting in a room with our scouts and watching all the tape and getting to know these players. We just kind of finished that first process up, our first draft meeting process, and getting in there. Like, most of our guys know these players inside and out. There's a few of us that are in-house that maybe don't know them as well as they do. So getting to know them, the players that way through our scouts, and then quite frankly coming here and meeting them. We had about 11 interviews last night, and hearing these guys' stories. It's always really kind of an interesting look into the person, and I enjoy that part of it.
With so many guys that you guys have to watch, how much do you lean on your scouts for a given player versus using your own eyes and watching?
Yeah, well, I'll use my own eyes on every player, but I lean on those guys a ton. Right? We have a veteran group, a group of really, really talented evaluators and scouts that have done this for a long time, and they are a great part of our process. And ours is, because I'm a scout by trade, I'm going to look at all these guys. I'm going to put eyes on them. But some of our guys are going to know these guys way better than I do, and I'm going to lean on those guys heavily for some of the decision-making process.
The assessment is that this might be a deeper defensive end class. Do you agree?
I do agree. I think this is a good big guy class, offense and defensively, and there's numbers there.
Brian, is there something about this combine that you'd like to see different moving forward?
I'd love for it to stay in Indy, because I know there's been some talk that it was. I love it being here. It's so convenient. It's a very easy process. I think obviously there's a lot of reasons, a lot of things we get out of this. One being the medical, right, which is very, very important to us. I think the contact with the players, the more the better for us. I think we get 45 scheduled interviews. We could do more, and then again, I think. Jeff Foster and his group do such an amazing job putting this thing together, and it's such an important part of our process. I'm pretty happy with it, I just hope we don't get too far down the road of moving it out of here and getting away from. It's a working event for us more so than anything else.